Hi, this is Isabel. How are you? So I'm broadcasting today. It's beautiful weather. Spring is here. We like it. So probably some of you may be surprised. I do this stream on how to change careers because right now actually things are a little bit slow and everyone is at home. So you probably think, well, I don't know about changing careers. And I've actually heard both sides. Some people say things are a little bit at a standstill right now because recruiters are not necessarily filling positions or there's a halt in hiring. And then, I'm part of those believers who think actually it's a great time to think about what it is that you want to do. Maybe, look at doing things differently. I mean, you're at home and maybe now you're thinking, well, I actually like working from home. Maybe I want to make it a full-time gig as opposed to going back to my company. So I think actually this time is great reflection on career, and you may find it that it's something different that you want to do in the next years for your life. So I just wait until people come up. I have someone who just came. Hello, Duki. If you could tell me your first name and where you're from, so I have an idea if you're in Switzerland or if you're abroad, so that I know a little bit in my presentation. So yeah, I'm part of those believers who think that now is a good time to change. Actually, it's a good time to reevaluate what you want to do, take some chances in doing something different. Anyways, I mean, time of crisis is also a time of opportunity, and I will be making some videos that I will share. I do my bi-weekly videos where I talk about all those opportunities online to actually work, maybe while you're in between two jobs or you're waiting to hear on an offer or something like that. Olivier, okay, yeah. Olivier is from Geneva, great. Marie from Geneva, and Apelum, not sure what the first name is, from Geneva. So we have a lot of Swiss or based in Switzerland, we'll say. So that's great. Pedro is from Portugal. I know Pedro very well. By the way, Pedro is an ex-colleague of mine. We used to work together, and I will talk about that actually in my presentation. So it will bring some memories of my times in corporate. So it's excellent that Pedro is here. Yeah, so I was saying right now is actually a good time to do some thinking, consider options. I mean, I think you have a job until you don't have a job, and I will also talk about that in my presentation. So rather than to wait to see what happens to you, better to say, okay, let me take a step forward and assess my options before somebody chooses those options for me. And that's what happens when you get laid off, is that you didn't choose. Someone said bye-bye, and you didn't see it coming, or even if you see it coming, it's falling on you, as opposed to you empowering yourself to say, this may happen, let me take a step forward on that. Isabel from Lausanne, another Isabel. So we're two Isabel now. Nice to hear that, says Pedro. Yes. Yeah, there were some positive times in when I was there. So I'll share that. I think it's important because I want you to understand my experience so that you see how that can also be your situation now. So let me share my screen so I can get started on the presentation, and I'll be flipping back so that I can see your comments. The way I run my presentation is that I start with one portion, so I don't keep going back and forth between the comments and my presentation. I do one piece, and then I take the questions, and then I follow with the next chapter or next portion. It's working well like this. So let me get started. Everyone can see, so this is the beginning of my presentation. So this is me, by the way. So about me, what I want to say about the mission of what I do is really to help you build skills and potential so that you can be free emotionally and financially. Really, this is what it's about. My 3 areas of work: entrepreneurship, networking, and careers. It's all about making you more independent so you can run your own career, you can empower yourself, as opposed to what happened to me in my career and what some of you may have experienced as well. So this is for people who are ambitious international leaders, motivated professionals, and this is not for people who are not serious about their career or not invested in their job search or their career change. So I want to teach you today how to become this employee of choice, how to cut down job search time by 50%, how to land a job with top organizations in Switzerland, how to gain valuable network connections. And I really like, for those of you who know me, I like this last part. I really think this is your leverage there. So this is me again. And the reason why I want you to look at this photo, I'll explain in a minute why, but there's a difference between this photo and another one I will show you. I want you to just keep in mind the snapshot. And again, it's a professional picture, but you can see the type of person I'm now with my business, bringing autonomy to individuals compared to before. So for me, it all started when I was 17. So I want to tell you a little bit my story so that you understand why now I work in the field that I work in. So it started for me at 17 when I wanted to go to Hollywood, actually. I wasn't in Switzerland. I wanted to go to Los Angeles. I wanted to have this typical 80s. So for those of you who were already born and alive in the 80s, it's very much the Dallas and the Dynasty, and those series about big cars, big houses. So I call that the lifestyle, the American lifestyle. Everything is big and people have luxury homes and so forth. So I was a little bit attracted to that when I was a teenager. I thought that was really cool and I wanted to be part of that. My other child dream was to find a soulmate, someone that I could share my mission or my life mission, my work with, etc. So those were my 2 ideas of what would make a life ideal. Of course, this can be different for everybody. Some people may say, for me, it's actually, I don't know, volunteering or working in a big corporation or being married with 4 children or something like that. Everyone has a different thing, and it's important to know yourself. So when I was in the United States, actually, I didn't go for the Hollywood acting type of roles, even though that could have been a career path by itself. But I actually work for corporations. And if some of you are still at that age where you're thinking, where should I work? A big company, a startup. I always tell young people, go for big companies because they will look good on your resume and they will really sell yourself. So if you work for big names, like as I did, Kellogg's, banking, Aetna. I mean, each time I had an interview, of course, people wanted to check that I had the knowledge, but they already knew that I was a good employee already because I had worked for serious, big corporations. So I had the right mindset and the right profile. So it helps you with your future career wherever you start. It's a good starting point. So of course, I will make the little comment about Lexmark because I have one of my ex-colleagues in the webinar. So Lexmark, I was hired out of Paris, and it was probably the biggest job, or I had the biggest responsibilities there. I was a regions manager, so I was responsible for many countries, and I really enjoyed the job when I was offered the position. And I was really excited. It was a big, in your career, sometimes you have those offers that are really making those big leaps for you. So maybe you start and maybe at some point it's a little bit of a plateau, and then you get this offer and you start really at a different level. So for me, it was the opportunity to work with very senior executives. I was involved in big projects. So you would say, well, everything goes perfect, working with big multinationals. And unfortunately not. What happened is that after being there for several months, I lost a job, actually. So the reason why I wanted to say this is because if it happened to some of you, or it may happen with what's going on right now, it's something that's part of life, I guess, is what I remember of it. I mean, it's just happens. You have a job, and then one day you don't have one. It's very complicated to understand why and how and all that. You could spend a lot of time probably on that, but I'm more of the type of person now where I say, okay, this is happening, let's move forward. And actually, it was just for a sign for me to move into something else. So I thought, what should I do after this? Should I go back to, corporations? How am I going to get back into corporations? I didn't know Switzerland. I didn't know Geneva. So the solution for me came by itself almost. I was supported by a career consultant, was very familiar with the Swiss market, and she helped me get back on my feet and start getting into something different. So after working with all these multinationals, I ended up working for a promising healthcare startup called Gavi, very active in Geneva. It's actually brought a lot of different changes to the healthcare industry in not-for-profit. I was getting offers after that. I was doing a master's degree, and I was also getting offers after the master's degree to become an HR director. I didn't take the offer because I didn't want to stay in the big organization, whether it be multinationals or something else. It wasn't really my cup of tea. I realized when I was working with the consultant who helped me get back on my feet, I realized I like the autonomy part. So I put that in a corner and say, let's hang on to that thought. So I was building up my career, working, getting also attention from the Swiss market. I received an award. So when I was working for Gavi, I actually did the whole training program for them for languages, and I was offered a trophy. So it was interesting because I'm actually really showing in the middle there, and it wasn't on purpose. I think probably because I'm short, I was placed in the front there. But looking at this photo, compared to the photo I just showed you, I mean, I really look a little bit, even though I'm wearing red, I do look a little bit shy and not really comfortable there in between all these people. So just to show you that I wasn't in my space. So I was still in HR, I was doing okay, but it wasn't it for me. So actually what I did is I did the master's degree, and it really helped me also with what I wanted to do, starting my own thing. And finding my true calling in Switzerland was really about being independent. So I didn't want to work for a company. I wanted to work for myself. And now that I work for myself, I want to help others find their true calling, whether it be working for a company or working for themselves. Even though now in most of my communications, and again, I will share more videos, I want to gear people a little bit towards the digital world and become more independent workers, because I really think it empowers you in your future to fall back on your feet. Whereas if you work for these big corporations, well, it's a hit or miss. Again, you could do well for many years, then there's a big crisis and there's layoffs, and then you're back to square one, then you go back, then you realize, well, now there's another crisis, and it happens every 10 years, more or less. So you're never really completely safe. And on top of that, you're not really building for the long term because you never know for how long it's for. So I found that by working for myself, I have full control. I do my own thing. It's all working for me. So I want to help people find their road as well. And I wanted to show you this photo, basically showing you that it's not a straight road. And that's why I wanted to share my story, because going from France, then to Los Angeles, and I did a stop in Paris, went to Switzerland. So it was definitely a bit of a travel there. So what I want you to know in terms of, now you're in a situation where you think, okay, maybe you have a job and you're considering doing something else, or maybe you don't have a job but you're thinking about maybe you don't have a job and you want to change careers. So I wanted to give you some steps to help you get seen by organizations and basically get some buy-in from organizations, so that you don't have to think, okay, how do I do this? Is it going to work for me, etc., etc. So what I'll do is I'll share this first step, and then I'll take questions. So the old and new paradigm. So basically, in the old age, it's not that old, but I would say up until 21st century. So you had the traditional career, so it was more progressive, going step by step, which is pretty much what I know when I started working. So you would work step by step, and then maybe ending up CEO at 50 plus, sometimes even 60. But you had to put your time in, and there was this idea of going step by step. You would only work for a couple of companies in your lifetime. Everything was long-term, long vision, and you would typically work for a large organization. Now, with the digital age, it's changing very quickly. So now you can have multiple careers, non-linear. I say this notion of locals, meaning that maybe you are an expat, but you end up living in one country, but you still work with other countries, etc. So there's this whole, I always tell people where you live and when you work is not the same. So now people live in one country and they work in another one. You have multiple experiences. We talk a lot about gig economy. So I like this idea of working different for different employers. Vision is very short term now. I mean, you see, we don't even know what's happening in 1 month at this stage. Everything's going digital, it's going tech. So you have to embrace it and go with it. It's like a wave. And now I think, and again, this last part is really my perspective, I think we're going more the solopreneur route and the one-person businesses. So you see now it's exploding online where people are starting their own businesses based on their skills. And it's not so much what I presented at the beginning where the dream was to work for a big company and live there and until you retire. I think now people want to, they want to be themselves. They want to find their own happiness and build their own skills and find their own clients, etc. They don't want to work for a company. I think it's also a personal wish of 2020 where people want to have this flexibility to run their business and maybe take care of their children and the work-life balance, etc. And this is probably going to be increased with the work from home we're going through right now, where some people may say, I don't want to go back to an office. I actually enjoy it, and I actually want to do something at home. So the preparation that you need to do now as a potential career changer, if you're looking at it, what you need to do is to see a little bit about your personality. So what do you like to do? What is your profile? So MBTI, for people who are familiar with personal development, it's a tool where you understand what are your preferences in terms of how you work. So there's a free test online called 16 Personalities. It will give you your preferences, your best way of working, what you're good at, your strength, and also your areas of weakness. This, by the way, will help you build later on your application. So I would really strongly suggest you look at this. What you can do also to prepare yourself a little bit if you're considering job change is to shadow people in the field that you want. So all these things I'm giving you here is preparation before you make the change. Because sometimes people think, I want to make a change because I'm sick and tired of something, and it's rushed a little bit. I prefer people test their options first and then make a rational decision. So job shadowing people works very well. Interview people in your target job pool that you're looking for. So I call that informational interview, approaching people and just exchanging and getting a little bit of an idea of what's going on in their market. Go to places where you want to meet people in the field that you want. So not at this moment, but maybe in a month or so. And you can also now attend a lot of things online as well, and where you can talk also to other people on Zoom, for example. There's a lot of meetings happening on Zoom at the moment. Check also how many job openings you find online in a particular profession will help you see whether there's a future. So if you go online and let's say you want to be, I don't know, accounting is one where you would find some positions, but something very, I don't know, administrative assistant in a firm, a law firm, for example. Well, is there a lot of jobs there? Or manager in a company, in a supply chain or something like that. So you see how many jobs you have and you see if there's a lot of opportunities or not. So obviously now the more the market is going towards this digitalization and tech, you will see a lot of jobs. There's less demand. So as opposed to have maybe 5 managers if you're in a operational where you need a lot of people right now, when you have a tool in tech that can do the work, maybe you only need 1 person. So you need to think about that when you make your choice. So changing careers is not just okay, I don't like this anymore and I want to do something new. It's also, is there a market in the thing that you want to do? Because otherwise you're just going from one layoff to potentially another layoff 6 months later because you went for a dead-end industry. And I see this happen all the time where people go for masters and PhDs and they think education, but education is only a tool. So doing more education in something where there's no market is not going to help you. So if tomorrow I say, I love philosophy and I'm going to do a PhD in philosophy, it's probably going to be interesting, but I'm not going to find more job opportunities. So you just have to be aware of that whole market thing. So the next options I see for career changers is really setting yourself up online and try to get Swiss clients is something that I really like. But again, I know some of you enjoy your corporate life or you may want to stay there for now. But those are the options that I see as to really go for what I showed in the scheme there is really go for being a solopreneur, setting yourself up online. And it's my favorite solution in a crisis market or in an in-between market where maybe you're in between jobs and you want to do something until things go back to better days. So going online, really, I see every day people making money online in different things. And I'll make a full video on my YouTube channel on that, about all the different things that you can do online right now that are opportunities. So again, I think people see now the virus and what it's bringing, but there's also a lot of opportunities for online work. The other thing you can do for yourself that's helpful is start investing in skills needed in Switzerland. So I see things, I just had a call today with recruiters. Skills are needed in scientific companies, tech, the medical field, obviously right now. Manual labor is something I see online, and it's part of those jobs that are needed. So manual labor, it could be technicians and things like that. The UN, I think, will recruit because they will put in place after the epidemic, they will probably grow some resources in terms of response to crisis and things like that. So I think, I think the UN, there will still be a lot of positions, but those are the areas of opportunities that I see. But again, they're very specific. So I put on my slide that it may not suit your profile. You may be someone that's not in those fields and you think, okay, it's not for me. So what you have to do is position yourself in part of building up your profile to be faster than your competition and to get a job faster than your competition. So a lot of people go quickly and they don't get any replies on their applications. And what I like to say is that you can't be everyone's type of employee. So some people are more adapted to maybe the banking sector. They work there their entire life and they do very well, and that's their thing. Other people may be great for the UN. For example, I had the great opportunity to work in both the private and the not-for-profit sectors, which I don't think a lot of people have made that transition. I haven't met so many in my career. But the more opportunities you get, obviously, the better. But those transitions are not easy to make. You just have to be aware of that. So take a step back and see, okay, where did I work and where was I successful? Where did I fit in very well? And try to see if that's something that you can go for in this time. Because if you change completely and you want to target companies where you have no experience in, let's say if tomorrow I wanted to work for a biopharma, for example, I would probably have a hard time because I have so little experience. So that's something you have to remember. So how do you position yourself in a tight market? This is what we have right now, where there's not going to be a lot of jobs and a lot of people are going to be looking. Well, first of all, you place yourself in a city or region where there's enough opportunities. So if you want to work and live in Switzerland, pick big cities like Zurich or Geneva or I know Lausanne, there's also opportunities. When I talk to clients a little bit outside of these cities, they struggled a little bit more because they tend to be more local jobs where you need to speak the local language and there's not many opportunities. Companies want you to speak the local language. So your best bet as an expat is Geneva and Zurich. Maybe a little bit of Basel as well, depending on your profile, but just keep that in mind. Don't put yourself in a situation And again, I've had clients of mine who decided this with their spouse, that they would follow the spouse. And of course, there's only one company hiring where they're going to, and it's going to be one of the other that gets stuck because, yeah, the spouse got the great job in that one company standing there. What about you? Where are you going to work? So my recommendation is pick a place that's really good for if you're in a couple, for the couple, and there's enough opportunities for the couple. The other solution is to work online, which was in my slide prior to that. So you can follow somebody anywhere and then you don't have the issue, which is also interesting. If you want to do something completely different, I think now will be tough, depending on what you pick. Again, there's areas of opportunities for people who are going to look after them. But it's going to be also difficult if you're going for the corporate world, because the corporate world, they will be very much going with the planned expectations of what they want. So if you're going for my solution, which is to go online and build your own thing, there's tons of opportunities. And the great thing is that you don't have to look a certain way, come from a certain culture, and there's not going to be all these must check the checklist. And you see this every day. People are quite successful online and they're very odd profiles. If you go for the corporate world, they tend to have a checklist and you have to meet the criteria. The other thing is that employers now will make an effort to see, they will not make the effort to see what you could do. So the resume needs to be completely clear and you need to spell it out. And that's the part where people sometimes fall short, and that's why they don't get selected and hired by the big companies, is because they don't have something that stands out, that's clear. Recruiters in those big organizations, they're very much linear. It's the rational mind. It's okay, what have you done? Yes, no, and that's it. So what you need is a unique selling proposition. You need to work on this. This is central to your application, positioning, reinventing yourself, whatever you want to call it. This is going to be central to be seen by a recruiter, whether it be on paper or online. You need to have something that defines you. And it takes a little bit of extra work than just having a bland resume, but it's going to be much more powerful because in the end, it's going to be more personalized. So you need to think a little bit about what's unique about you. Now what you can write down is maybe 6 personality traits that you have that are yours. When I made the video with a colleague in recruitment in Switzerland, it was very interesting, and I had a lot of views on this video where she talked about the fact that most companies, they're not going to search for people that are highly technical. And I see this again every day when I open my computer and I read articles about the future of jobs and recruitment. Most companies now are more interested in soft skills, because we all know that the technical skills are going to be automated, most of them. So being a great accountant is wonderful, but in a few years, a machine can do that for you. Or being a great, I don't know, so I'm thinking about accounting, but there's other things, being a great financial analyst or something like that. This can be also automated. However, it's maybe the other things that you that weren't really put value on. So being loyal, being honest. And that's what this recruiter was saying, how all these qualities are really wanted in Switzerland. It's a country where people want reliable people. So they're going to want someone that they can trust, that they can rely on. That's what works in Switzerland. So it's not so much having the masters or the PhDs and so forth. A lot of internationals are bringing that over to Switzerland thinking, wow, it's great, I have all these degrees. But that's not the selling point in Switzerland. The selling point is really, what kind of person are you? This is why the resume has all these personal details. They want to do background checks. They want to know, your ex-employers and how you work, etc. Your reputation in Switzerland is gold. So it's more gold than getting a PhD. So that's what you have to keep in mind. If you want to get these great jobs in Switzerland, it's not so much about adding education or adding skills, but more about, do I have the right persona that I can be trusted and build that image about me where people want to talk to me. So that's why developing those or showing those, because you don't really, you're not loyal. I mean, it's not something you can develop. But I mean, most people, they don't have it on the resume. Maybe they think it's not so relevant or it's taken for granted. But in Switzerland, it's actually people want to see these things. And then what you want is to have also skills. So of course, the personality is important. Skills are important. So the ability to deliver on time, to be working under pressure. So I'm just giving you some general examples. You have tons more if you look. I would definitely recommend that you can get inspiration from online CVs, but I wouldn't do something that's too generic, because people will see that it's the generic CV. I mean by that, yeah, I work well under pressure, and those CVs that you read and they're templates basically. So you want to adapt it to your case. So ability to speak languages is something very personal, team management, etc. So whatever suits you and your profile. And then you do a summary. In this summary, you would also have a title header. People forget this 99% of the time. They don't have a header. What I mean by a header is something that you put on top of the resume that says what you do, basically. So if it's a job description that you found online, it's easy because you just use the one you saw online. And if it's something that you don't know, then you try to find what's the closest of what you're looking for. So if you send your resume to a recruitment firm or online as a spontaneous, just try to put some names there, some headers that you think that's what you want to be called for. So I did this before in my career, and it worked very well. The whole modeling the job description. That's why now I use it when I work with individuals, because I know it works. I know how recruiters think. They basically, again, it's very black and white. They want to see whatever is on the job description on the resume. So it's not big invention that you have to do. You just have to be honest on what you can do, but try to be as close as the job description. So it would look something like this: sales manager, let's say that's for the example, IT, business applications, result driven. So it would be on top of your application. So I know on this slide it's a little bit far away, but it goes like this on top of the resume. Of course, you have a photo on the right and your details on the left. So I know for some people it's difficult to work a CV like this because it's very methodological. So some people with their resume, they tend to be creative. They tend to be a little bit like, I want it that way. What I say is, think about the recruiter when you're working on it's the same if you work for, if you're going to do a blog post or anything that you produce to be read or to be seen by somebody else, you have to think about the receiving end. So even if you don't like the way the Swiss CV is formatted, that's what's going to get you a job. So, it's if you're on the market and you want a job, you want to be selected, you have to build it this way because that's the way that recruiters like it. So, in a way, it replies to the question. So before I move to building your application, I just want to go back quickly to see if there's any questions. Okay, just taking questions from the first portion now. So if you have questions about building the profile and the method that I just showed about the skills and the okay, Miss Walita, can you speak to the photo, professional photo? Yes, professional photo. Not at this moment because you can't see anybody now, but yeah, when you are free again to leave the house, it's better to see a photographer. I know one in Lausanne that's very good. She did my photos in case. I can recommend her. She's very good. She does the professional headshots. I can probably find someone in Geneva as well. But it's worth the cost because I think you want to, again, it's image is everything nowadays. And I talk about this when I talk about branding, and people will remember you if they see a professional image. So it helps. Now, worst case scenario, you're really short, really, in difficult situation with money. You can always try to do something now with, I know I'm a big fan of Samsung these days, and they do great photos and great videos. You can always find maybe someone who's good with image, who can maybe find a background that looks neutral and try to do something semi-professional until you have the budget maybe to spend on a photographer. But I know in Switzerland it's a budget, but I try to advise people to do things in the right order to maximize their chance of being on top of the pile, because those little details will make the difference. Someone who took the time to do the professional headshot, who took the time to make the nice resume, and the things that I'm going to explain in a little while. So people who have taken the time to make those steps, they will be more successful. So yeah, I think it's worth it in the end. It's an expense that's worthy. And then the photos you can use for all other things as well. So you see my photos, I've used them for social media. Whenever I do a post or something, I have my photo in there. So I'm using it quite a lot, not just for one type of thing. So once you have the headshot, put it on your LinkedIn, you can put it when you do a post, and it would make you look a little bit polished. So going back. Okay, I'm just getting a little sip of water. So building up your application, that's step 2 that will get you on top of the pile and be seen by the big organization. So career changers must do in Switzerland, basically, if you have a non-typical, non-linear type of profile, you're going to raise some doubt in a recruiter's mind. So again, I'm talking about the traditional, the multinationals or the non-for-profit, even, they think the same. Very much, I want someone who's done the same thing somewhere else. So if you're someone who's made a whole career of being non-typicals, and I've met a lot of those who traveled the world, had a bunch of different jobs. So there will be some work to do, to get to the point where you can present a CV that makes sense for a recruiter and increases this trust. So the first reaction will be not to trust it if it looks too complicated, if it looks a little bit too where there's a lot of gaps, for example, that are not explained. And again, there's so many different stories out there on the web about how to fill gaps and how do you make your resume look coherent. I think coherence is a key word here. So if you're going to change careers because you have to, you're in Switzerland and your job is no longer you can't find anything based on your skill set and you have to change, try to explain that in your resume and in your cover letter, because recruiters will have a hard time understanding. And I know it happens to me when I'm looking through profiles. I'm doing a headhunting right now, and I was looking at different profiles, and I try to see, okay, what does this person have that I want based on my job that I need to fill? So you need to make it really easy for the recruiter to catch it quickly on your LinkedIn or on your resume. So it has to be very clear, maybe one sentence. And I know for a lot of people it's difficult because it's like, where do I put it? On top, at the bottom, in the middle, in the job itself? There's this whole complexity that it shouldn't be complex. I mean, in the end, as long as you're honest, and the big word I want you to remember also from this webinar is the fact that you own whatever decisions that you make. So for example, in my resume, I know I had also some changes. I mean, I started in California, then I went to Paris, and there's some changes. So if I had an interview today, I would probably have to explain also why I changed, etc. So everyone has those that you have to explain. But as long as you do it and you're happy with it in a way, meaning that, okay, you moved countries, but you know why, and it was a great experience. And I think that's what recruiters sometimes want to see. It's not so much you had the changes, but that you're okay with them. Because sometimes people have changes, but it was something that they haven't really digested. And I had a lot of people, when we worked on their career transition, they didn't accept what happened to them. So maybe it's a layoff that went sour. And I've had that happen, not to me, but to clients. And the fact that it was a sour layoff or sour termination, you can tell when they talk about it. You can tell by their face, how they speak. So if you had something like this happen to you, maybe you were out of work for 2 years, but you didn't like the fact that you were out, maybe because you didn't like, being outside of the market, and you can tell when you explain it that you're not happy with it, then it's going to come across in the conversation. People will have doubts. Whereas if you, and typically for women, you left because you took care of a child and you're happy, you spend this time with your child, it was a great experience. It's not the same. It's because you own it, you're happy about it. it goes through much easier. So it's not so much why you were out or how long, it's more, you know, how you are okay with it and you can communicate about it without being down or unhappy or, you know, feeling like you lack something, etc. And this is also something I see with ages. I talked about this with a consultant. We will do a live webinar together as well. She's also a talent experience in talent management and HR. And she was saying that we agreed on that every age has their problems. So if you're in your 20s, you know, you're too young. If you're in your 50s, you're too old. So you never, it's never the perfect time. If you're in your 30s, you may have a child and no one wants you, or at least you see it from that perspective. So I'm 20, I'm young, no one will want me because I'm inexperienced. I'm 30, I'm going to have a baby, or people think I'm going to have a baby, so no one will want to hire me. So in the end, no one ever wants to hire you. So you just have to come to the point where you say, okay, I'm at the age that I'm at with the pluses and the minuses, and I just have to show the benefits to the employer, and that's it, you know. And if that person is completely against young people, old people, whatever, then it's not the right employer for you. That's it. So talking a little bit more about cover letter and resume, because that's part of your tools and your application. So a good cover letter is split into 3 sections. So you usually have a grand opening on the company, then you would have some key skills, and then the third part is about making connections between your background and the job requirements. So by the way, I will explain in a minute, I cover more in detail all these aspects in my workshop coming. So you would have typically online posting where, you know, you reply to an ad. So that's a very specific kind of communication. Then you would also have some resume writing basics. So let's say you want to write a resume, you know, what are some of the things that you want to put in there? That's also a big part of who you are as a person. So there's some skill set there that you need in terms of your cover letter and your resume writing. So how do you build some documents that are going to be eye-catching, interesting, that recruiters will want to know more about you? And I've seen a little bit of everything out there. You know, some people are a little bit too creative for the Swiss market. Some people just put whatever they've done, but there's no storytelling behind it. So as of today, 2020, resume is still a big part of application and recruitment. And it's still, I think, a complexity for most people, even though you have tutorials online, you have websites where you can go, you know, build your own resume. But most of these tools, you still have to figure it out yourself. And most people don't have the recruiter mindset. So you're going to put forward what you think you should put forward, maybe what you caught here and there in different tutorials, but you don't have this mindset of the recruiter, that I say we because I've been doing recruitment for a long time, what we have in mind when we look at resumes. So it's a little bit like it's going to be hard for you to figure out what's important and what you need to put on your resume. And I'm saying this because I work with clients where we have several sessions together, and I could say, if I look at what we cover during those sessions, 90% is about resume. And you think about all the things we could talk about in career type of coaching, it's 90% the resume, because people have a very hard time getting this one nip in the bud. And as a consultant, I thought, okay, that's going to be an hour of work, and then we move on to maybe talking about different things. But I realized that most people, they would use all their hours with me just to talk about the resume, because just one part of the resume took almost 2 sessions. So yeah, it's you know, deciding what goes on there, what doesn't go, how to fill gaps. You know, I'm changing careers. How do I introduce that to a recruiter so I don't scare them away? A big part is communication for resume writing. So and also understanding the mindset of the person who reads it, reassuring in the points that could be pain points, you know, especially on that header that I just showed you with your details. Putting your details, you know, again, for some people, it's also maybe a little bit showing vulnerability, where if you put that you're married and you have 3 kids, oh my God, no one will want to hire me. We go back to, you know, those fear factors, etc. So there's a lot of psychology also behind something as simple as resume writing and cover letter writing, because it's a big piece of you. It's a big part of your life, and also a little bit your private life in Switzerland because of their whole background check. So it can be a little bit scary, but it doesn't have to be. That's what I mean. It really doesn't have to be. I mean, in the end, it's just a recruitment in Switzerland is just a tick the box type of thing. So you just have to keep a little bit of a distance from it and say, that's how the rules are, and I'm just going to follow the rules. So before I move, probably do the do's and don'ts, and then I'll move to the questions. So do's on the resume, definitely format and consistency are important. So that's the number one mistake I see people make. And still today, when I get resumes, people start with one format, meaning they will say, you know, how it says under each job, handled communication, managed people, delivered results, and they will change. They will say deliver results, delivered results, and they will change the tense, change the format, and it makes it harder to follow. So having consistency in resume writing is a big part of success. And also the content of the resume. Make sure you have all these parts that I have under there. You know, a title header missing 99% of the time. Profile and key skills missing 99% of the time. So just if you do those two things here, you're increasing your engagement with recruiters, because they will know immediately, okay, this person is looking for his job as a sales manager. Remember my example earlier. Their skills are that they're very good at delivering results in leading teams. They're very punctual, you know, and the things that I showed you earlier. So they can know immediately who you are. So those two things will be big selling points there. Those things are a little bit less of a selling point. And sometimes when people spend so much time on there, I just feel a bit sorry, because they're not very high stake type of information. So especially if you're now, let's say you're in your 40s or your 50s, you know, your education, if it was 2000, if it was 90 something, you know, no one is going to pay attention to that. Same thing with experiences, you know, it's only going to be the most relevant and recent experience. So you get to a part in your life past 35, I would say, where you have to clean up the resume. I mean, you have to, you can't. I see people, they still have their first internship in the 90s. I mean, no one is going to pay attention to that. So you have to give a little bit of a diet to your resume, you know, give it a little skimming. You know, if you have 4 pages now because, you know, you've done so many things and everything is on there, it's spring now, it's springtime cleaning. So you need to make your resume a little bit, refresh your resume a little bit to something more marketable in 2020. So the experiences, the education, all that needs to be trimmed. Professional development, that's something you should keep up to date. And obviously now the employees, I would say the employee of choice will be the employees that are continually educating themselves. So someone who does the continuing education online. So even if you're good at what you do, maybe you have a job now and you're somewhat secure, but to protect yourself, I see two things as big employment insurances, if I can call it that. The first one is to keep educating yourself all the time, you know, go online and train yourself, get that certificate. I see my high potentials now that are in a group that I belong to, you know, they're all, every day they're training themselves in a different course. So you can do that with LinkedIn Premium, but you can also do that with different platforms. I'm not basically selling one more than another. I think the great thing with LinkedIn is that you have a lot of things that are corporate related that could be interesting. But keep yourself trained all the time now, not just once. The other second thing for to keep yourself against unemployment is networking, and I'll get to that in a minute. To build up your network is a good, I call that insurance against unemployment. So professional development, interests, that's less important. So you don't want to spend too much time on that one. But really your two first ones should be your selling points. What you want to avoid doing in your resume and cover letter to some extent, no branding. So again, taking the template from the web and just, you know, almost copying it, even keeping it the way it is, and just putting your name on top, that would be the worst. No clarity in what you seek. In Switzerland, you can't do that. It's not going to work. to list job tasks. So yes, I was a manager and I did such and such. This is something that people assume that you do because you were paid for that. Now, what's interesting, to give you a difference there. So let's say I was an HR manager. So if I just say that my role was to manage project and manage maybe, I don't know, projects linked to employee performance or employee salaries or whatever, yeah, that's somewhat interesting, but it's still much part of a HR manager job. Now, if I said, you know, when I was an HR manager, I reduced turnover by X%. I cleaned up the files, you know, for the countries I was responsible for, which, by the way, I did, and I have someone who can attest to that here. But if you did things a little bit outside of your regular type of job, that you outperformed your job almost, that's a little bit more interesting for a company. They will say, wow, this person goes a little bit beyond the limits. That makes you a higher potential. That makes you more attractive. So that's just a sideline there. Too many pages with a long work history is not really great. And I know I heard in Switzerland that some companies want that. They want the whole history. I would keep two things. I would have a selling type of resume where, you know, to apply online and to send the first time around, I would send more of a condensed copy. And then when you have the interview, maybe you can have your full history there that you cover with questions from the recruiter to help you a little bit as a conversation guide. But I don't think you need to go into such details the first time you send a resume, because it's just going to clog the application you're using or the resume or the mailbox of the recruiter. So personally, I know I would be really upset to get a 6-page resume. And I did get 6 pages resume, by the way. And I know I hated it because you have to think again about the other side. You know, the person has to print it. If you lack paper in middle of printing, you only have 2 pages out and then you have to put paper again. I mean, it's just crazy when you have 6 pages. You know, getting all these pages stay together is just crazy. So too many pages is not helpful. I know for executive resumes, now the trend is 1 page. That's the global trending thing going on, 1 page, last 5 years. Now, if for Switzerland, I know they like more details. They really want more details. So I think 2 pages is probably a good bet. It's the right middle ground. But beyond 2 pages, I just think it's just too much. List all jobs with all tasks. Yeah, so that's something I would not do because no one wants to know the details that are regular part of your normal job. So let me go back before I talk about my favorite topic. Okay. Krishna is asking a question. How about non-EU to come to Switzerland and get a job? Yeah, that's always the tough one with my channel because I have a lot of people watching from all over the world. And yeah, permits is something I don't have a lot of power on, especially now things are stopped. So there's already a delay going on in the French part of Switzerland for permits in general. So if you're non-EU, your chances to now, especially now with the travel that stopped also. So it's a multiplicity of factors. I mean, it wasn't, before the crisis, it was already difficult for non-EU to even be noticed. And now the fact that you can't even travel anywhere, and even for the locals to get recruited will be tougher because there will be less positions and very targeted positions. So for people who have non-EU profiles, it's just going to be pretty much impossible unless you're in a not-for-profit, like a United Nations type of employees. Then those will still be able to come because they have the right, you know, to be in Switzerland and in Geneva. So I think those will still be able to travel, you know, when flights go back to normal and stuff. But I think for all of the people, if you have a non-EU, I would not necessarily target Switzerland. I always tell people, start your search in your country first. Build up your profile in your country. Become the go-to person in your industry, in your country. And then maybe also as time goes by, maybe things change with Switzerland, the law and passports and all that. Maybe, you know, and your company might be able to send you there. Also, that's an option. That's what I tell people is build up your profile at home, wait until maybe you get transferred over. But right now, I'm just going to be frankly honest. Right now is probably not the good time anyway. So right now, I only give this advice for EU people. And I believe the borders will be reopened for EU in the next months, but for non-EU, it's going to be far down the line. So that's even making it more complicated. So moving to my next topic, if there's no more question, my favorite networking topic. So my unemployment insurance there, building up your network. When I lost my job back in 2008, I had built networks before in my job, in my career. I had built networks a little bit in Los Angeles, a little bit in Paris. But the fact that Switzerland was new and I was already learning the job and it was quite intense at the time, I didn't really have time to meet many people and build a network. But I realize now that no matter what your situation is, if you're a busy executive, if you have very little time, build your network. This is really something you will thank me for, especially with times of crisis that we might face again. You will always be happy to have a network. And it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, in 2008, that was, 12 years ago, there was no apps to connect online. LinkedIn, I don't even think LinkedIn was on yet. But at the time, there was no such thing as digital communication. It was very much you had to go to events. So now I think things will be a little bit easier to network. And I'll talk about online networking here. So the first thing you need to do when you think about how to build a network is what's your objective? What do you want to do with this network? So I saw 4 categories. The first one is I just want to meet and greet people in Switzerland. For example, I'm new, I followed a partner. Even if you don't follow a partner, you're new. So basically you're new and you're just starting out. And yeah, you just want to see some faces, understand the culture. That's your first objective. Number 2 is you want to get a job. Number 3 is you want to get feedback. And number 4 is you want to get clients. So I think most of you're probably a little bit here. And I would say if you're changing jobs, you're probably a little bit here as well. Because as I said earlier, if you want to change jobs or careers, you need feedback. It's going to help you decide whether it's a yes or no. So career changes, networking feedback is definitely going to help you, and it's going to help you make decisions. So when I help people with one-to-one on their career change, I always send them to networking contacts so that they can ask some questions. So if they choose to work one-to-one with me, I will share my network with them and say, go to talk to this person. You will learn everything you need to learn about hotel management or about being a supply chain analyst or what have you. I think it's important to get it from the horse's mouth. You can't know something until you hear it from somebody who's in it. So for example, I can say, I want to be this singer. I always use that example of the singer. I want to be a singer. But yet you realize behind the scenes that the person, works 24/7, or I just learned yesterday, influencers online, video makers on YouTube, they work every day on their YouTube channel. So something that you think you may want, you realize there's a lot behind it. So it may not suit you. So some of the questions you can ask is, do you think there's a market for such and such jobs in Switzerland? So those are questions you could ask people online that you connect with, and I will explain in a minute, what are some of the online channels you can use. But once you get a hold of somebody that's reasonably fit to answer those questions, so you can't just ask that to anybody, but people you target in your field that you want to work in, things like, do you think there's a market for these jobs? Do you know someone who successfully made that transition, and how did they do it? So the best way to know if something is possible is to ask someone who did it. That's what I do when I have an objective, especially in the last 6 months. When I'm going for an objective, I always try to find someone who did it and try to basically understand what they did so I can replicate it. So that's the best way, in my view. And if you were trying to get a job, where would you look? So you can ask someone in your network, where would you look for this kind of role? Do you have any tips for me? Usually people like to give advice. So always approach people with an advisory type of position, because people will be flattered to give advice that they're actually looked up upon. I think they have this new thing. I'll talk about LinkedIn in a moment, but I think they have this thing now about LinkedIn mentors. So people who are signaling on LinkedIn that they're okay to be mentors. So that means they're okay to be contacted for advice. So this is making things so much easier for job seekers, because in the past, first you had to identify people. Probably maybe they don't want to be a mentor to you, or they don't want to answer questions because they think, what's in it for me, right? But now people actually, they're volunteering to be mentors, and they're open for that. Maybe they see their benefit as well, because I always look at it as everything in life is about giving and sharing. So at some point, something you do for somebody, you will be rewarded at some point. Maybe you have a job for them in 5 years. So I think on LinkedIn now, this type of thing can be achieved. So this is what you have right now in the job market in Switzerland. And I would argue probably it's the same in a lot of countries. Most of the jobs are actually here where there's less competition. And most expats in my clients, people who watch my videos, etc., they're here. Most people just search online and they're looking at job postings. However, job postings, that's only minimal part of the market. Most jobs are not advertised. So if you're going for that market, the open market, you don't see most of the opportunities. So the opportunities you see on the job markets are usually targeted at young people. So companies who have trainee programs, who are looking for more junior staff, I would say they have a chance to find something. I have a client now who found jobs, and I would say she's part of that category of high potential, young, etc. If you've gone to a very high Ivy League kind of university, maybe you have one experience somewhere prestigious or something like that. Yeah, maybe you can find a job online as a young graduate. But I would say for most people who are above 32, 33, you already have a few kind of experiences behind you. The market is going to be tighter and tighter, because as you age, also there's less opportunities, because it's a little bit like a pyramid. Most of the jobs are entry level, and then when you get to manager and above, you only have maybe one, maybe two. And now with automatization or digitalization, there will be even less spots, because you will have maybe a few entry level, and then a lot of automation, and maybe one CEO, and that's it. So the whole pyramid will be even skinnier. So you need to be aware that you won't have so many jobs to find anyways. So, and probably less so now on the job market. Either you are a very, very technical specialist and you can find some jobs there, or an entry level. But if you're one of those, I would say, broader type of manager, project management, all these things that I see, it's going to be hard to find that suited type of opportunity. So you want to be here. You want to be in the hidden market. You want to be where the job is not created yet. And I found a few people lately, last year or so, who found jobs by just talking to the hiring manager, and they created the job for them. So that's why you want to have a lot of conversations, because sometimes companies don't even know they have a need. So for example, especially now, people will think twice about budgets, etc. So they may need someone in accounting, but they haven't formalized it yet. So it's just going to be staying at the level where they're thinking about it, and it never gets to a job description. So if you talk to this hiring manager, they may be able to speak to you and say, yeah, we have accounting needs, but we don't know, etc. And you may be able to convince them that you could bring them a lot of value, and they may hire you that way, completely under radar. So especially with the organizations that may not require so much paperwork. If you're working for a big organization, chances are you will have to go through HR anyways, and it's a whole process, and you will need a job description. But if it's a smaller, maybe a startup or a company, you may go under the radar and find yourself a position. When I was selected after losing my job for the not-for-profit, it was a short-term position, so it wasn't completely firmed up yet. It was a need that was put on a job description in a few sentences, and I was able to get my foot in the door that way. So very temporary job, not completely described. through the network of the consultant that worked with me, and that's it. I found a job like that. So again, it was completely under the radar, or it was through a network that I was able to find this job that got me back on my feet. So it proved to me that everything is about people you know. So you want to know a lot of people, have a lot of people in your Swiss network who could be your advocates. So those people will keep their eyes out for you. They will share. But again, you have to remember, building a network also means sharing information so that people also think about you, because it can be just all about you and you wanting things. You also have to give things. So it takes a little bit of know-how. So in networking, we're still very much talking about strong ties and weak ties. So that's very much, it goes back to the 70s of research that was done. So you have two types of network. You have your strong network, meaning people you know already. And I strongly advise you right now to think twice. I'm 99.9% sure you already have gold in your network as we're speaking, but you haven't tapped into it. Because most of us, these people, they're so close to us. We talk with them all the time. We forget even that they know information. So we have a network, and I think also this is something that happens later on when we make a contact with someone and we know, okay, they work there, and then we forget about them. And I think really understanding what each person in your network is doing and where they work and what they have to offer helps us really tap into that network when we need. So already the network that you have right now, friends, family, etc., you'd be surprised by just a call. And especially now with confinement, this is a great opportunity to say hi. If you have a few people that if you're looking for a job in Switzerland, the people you already know is your strong ties. So people around you that you speak to more or less frequently, just say hi, how are you doing? Try to see where they're at, and you'd be surprised. You may get some information, and again, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a job offer to you, but you may learn about what's going on by talking to people. So your neighbor that you cross when you go and buy your baguette every day may tell you, oh yeah, my friend works for such and such high-tech company, and with what's going on right now, they may need someone doing such and such. Or you always get the what I call, it's the grapevine. You always hear it from the grapevine, and then you can position yourself here, and you can go straight to the decision maker. So you don't have to go through the hustle and bustle of sending your resume via a online job board. It gets on hold there for God knows how long, and you don't hear back, and then your self-esteem goes down, and then you go and try again, and you go back to not hearing back, and you can do this for months, when sometimes taking the time to actually connect with a few people that are in your close network could bring you a lot of resources. Now, what I really advise also for individuals is to develop also this part. So once you do your work of staying in touch with, which typically you should already, with your close network, you should try to go outside of your comfort zone. So try to reach out as much as possible to the unknown, because this is where you will get ideas, you will get new information, etc. And you can do a lot of that online right now. I mean, just by joining this webinar tonight is already a way to reach out outside of your comfort zone, or following somebody else's information. Or right now, there's lots of webinars left and right on Meetup and even Bright and so forth. So you can already start there. That's going to be a new source of information for you, a new source of contacts. So it all depends on what you do with it. But reaching out to information that you have on the top of your keyboard is already one way to network. So I'm really bringing now network to the digital age as well. It's not anymore. I mean, it can happen, but I'm trying also to get people outside of, networking is going to an apéro somewhere with a glass of champagne and you have a bunch of boring people there. That's still going on, and I think people are successful at it, but you don't have to do networking that way. You can do networking from your keyboard. So online networking is a huge source of information for me. I mean, you have the Facebooks and the LinkedIns and the blogs that can help you get your message out there, get seen. Visibility is huge in the 21st century. So the more visibility and the more network, the more opportunities you get. So someone who has the same profile, and I've tested this recently with candidates that I forwarded to a company. So I'm on a mission right now to find a profile for business development. And I picked several people that were all business developers, but they have very different profiles. And, I didn't understand why they weren't getting through. So when I was looking at their profile, I thought, okay, they have business development in Switzerland, etc. And then one person actually had a very similar profile, but she had a very polished type of profile, meaning she put the effort in the photo, in her marketing. She's also a little bit more, I would say, communications, marketing oriented than the other ones. And that really made a huge difference. So the message is really, if you're right now looking at which part of my profile should I work on to make myself more visible, I would say definitely try to make yourself a little bit more marketable in terms of your communications, in terms of how you present yourself. It makes a huge difference. So same profile, same level of experience, same years of experience, everything, but someone who put a little bit more effort in the packaging is going to be more successful. So it sounds a little bit superficial maybe, but it's the truth. I mean, we live in a world where image is everything. And I see it now also when people do PowerPoints. My PowerPoints tend to be a little bit busier than the average marketer. But when I see people who are doing presentations, they have maybe one word. Sometimes they don't even have a word, they just have a photo. So we see that now people are really building everything around image and not so much around words anymore. So that's just something to be aware of. So tips for growing your network online. I would definitely value quality, especially if you're starting out, let's say on LinkedIn or something like that. Quality over quantity is going to be very helpful. Target people effectively. That's going to be very, very helpful for you as well. Be polite, etiquette is important. So again, if you're sending me your resume immediately and saying, here's my resume, what can you do for me? That's not etiquette. That's a little bit rude. I mean, first you want to say, hi, I looked at your profile. I think we have a few things in common. You don't want immediately to push your resume onto somebody. So features for a fee, that's a good one, because a lot of those platforms now have the option to get the premium version. And I was talking earlier about LinkedIn Premium, where you get a little bit more for a fee. So I don't want to get into those details again in this webinar, but I think it's, if you're starting out, if you're not a full-time recruiter, or you're not really building a business and trying to get a lot of connections, I would say with the free version, you can do a lot. If you're a job seeker, I would say you can already get a few contacts. And there's a lot of ways where you can use LinkedIn for free, especially when you're mixed with people in a group. So for example, I have 2 groups now in LinkedIn. One is called C-Suite Place. The other one is for HR. It's called HR Leaders and Innovators. So let's say we were both part of this group. You could email everybody in the group without the in-mail version. So there's ways like this where you can avoid the in-mail. Also, you can always find the person's email. When you look at where they work, you can easily find that on Google. Promote the right content, meaning that if you're looking for opportunities in a specific sector, make sure that whatever you do, you talk about what it is that you're looking for. If you're interested in developing your profile in healthcare, make sure that you communicate about healthcare. It's all about putting you as a go-to person, employee of choice, etc. Unique value proposition will also put you in the employee of choice. This is what I do. This is my profile. It's very spelled out. It's clean, and people understand it. Use keywords that make sense. I spend a lot of time when I do the training on LinkedIn to explain the keywords that you need to put on LinkedIn. If you look at my profile after this webinar, you will see I've added actually a few keywords, because this is actually what the robots on LinkedIn will actually look at. So if you want to appear in searches, you have to have the right keywords to appear in the right searches. So everything now is about matching. You have to understand a little bit how the search engines work so that you can position yourself very well. And finally, the best way, again, is to look at what other people are doing and do the same thing, just as simple as that. So if you want to become a financial advisor in Geneva, look at a few financial advisors on your searches and see how they present themselves and pick the best out of this world, Set reachable goals every week to ensure constant evolution. So if you want to see a difference in your application, in your results, you need to do something consistently. So the first couple of weeks, you may not see anything new, but as you repeat things over and over, you will see that people start looking at you. So it's all a question of being present and showing that you're there. And people will start noticing you. It's like if you go to your neighbor tomorrow and you knock on the door, no one is going to pay attention. Now you do that every day for a week. Everyone in the building knows that you knock on this person's door. So again, it's doing things repeatedly. People notice, and people will see, okay, this person is serious about this because they already came 6 times. So so that's it. That's all you need to do. So just taking questions quickly. Pedro is saying this is really important, fighting the comfort zone. Yeah, it's hard for most people. I say for most people because for me, I thrive on that. Going out of my comfort zone, I love it. The more the challenge, the better I thrive because I like taking risks. That's part of my DNA. But I know some people, it's not comfortable. It's not making them feel good. I think if you look at those tests, those personality tests that you have, the MBTI and also Insight. Of course, I wasn't surprised to know I'm red in Insight. I should have known this for a long time. But basically, the red is the person who's leader and likes the risks and all that. So once you have done your Insight, you understand a little bit why you thrive on certain things and why you're not comfortable with other things. So again, you can find it. You type on Google Insight, and you can find the test. You can do it for free. I've done mine for free. So it gives you your profile, and also it shows you what are people that are very well adjusted to you. That could be helpful in a work situation. But yeah, going out of the comfort zone, I think it's hard at the beginning, but then you get so much more out of it. So if you look at the risk that I took, going into not-for-profit, so leaving the corporate world, at the beginning, you might feel a bit weird, and I had a hard time to adapt at the beginning. It was a brand new world, just like it was a brand new world when I went solopreneur. But each time I learned so much that the benefits outweighed the problems, if you want to say it that way. So one way to go over or to go beyond the comfort zone is to say the benefits are going to be higher than the pain. And that's how you motivate yourself as well. So so that's what I would think could work for some people who really don't want to leave the comfort zone, is to look at the benefit, to look at the gain from it. So Olivier is saying, I got to run. Thank you for the presentation. I will make it available. It's on my YouTube channel, so you can watch the end of it. Now, Walita, how about admin jobs in big companies? For example, big pharma, admin, HR, not just technical experience. Admin jobs in big companies, again, it's going to be part of those that now you have a lot of resources, online tools that you can use, where a lot gets automated in terms of inbox management and groups chatting with other employees and stuff with Slack. So a lot of admin is automated, but there's still some admin jobs for sure. You just have to look on job boards. That's a good one for job boards. There's still a lot of admin advertised there. The only thing in Switzerland is that you have to be very good. So you can't just say, well, because I didn't find a job in my sector, well, I'm falling back on an admin job. I interviewed a lot of people who tried to do it that way. You're not going to be very credible. Most people like admins that are actually people who are admin. So that's the thing. So I'll just finish now. What I wanted to show you is basically if you were to design the perfect job hunter profile. So I have a workshop that's happening this weekend. I already have spots taken on that. So it's a full boot camp for the weekend. Again, it's this Saturday and this Sunday, where I walk you through all these steps. So we work on your resume together, we work on your cover letter, we work on your LinkedIn to have it look and feel perfect for recruiters. So as opposed to you trying to do it on your own and tapping and trying to find the right formula, I'm just walking you through it. So we're going to cover that as a group. So it's also helpful to get the group feedback. That's also networking. Some people in your group might be your base network that you start as of this weekend. So it could be also a decision that you make to do something a little bit different. So in this bootcamp, basically, you would get at the end of the 2 days your recession-proof job application, audit, CV, cover letter, and LinkedIn. You will get guidance to get more visibility, attract top recruitment firms. As I said earlier, become an employee of choice, take charge of your career to get prepared, get recruiter and HR exclusive specific insider information, because I will share also my experience, and understand the mindset of efficient leaders so that you can also be in the mindset to succeed. Again, going out of your comfort zone, trying maybe something you haven't tried in networking and all these things. So that's going to put you in a different situation than you are now. So it's 6 sessions online with me during the 2 days. You have access to a Facebook community for a week, and you can answer questions, ask questions during the 7 days to me on the community page. So that's it. It's happening this weekend. And if you sign up before the end of the day, so I would say before midnight tonight, you get as extras the listing of English-speaking companies in Switzerland and the job boards by function. So, there's different job boards depending on if you're medical or, assisting and all that. There's tons of job boards. People don't know about all of them, but I had some research done on that so that you can benefit. So that's going to be your bonuses if you're a action taker and you decide to join the workshop this weekend. So it's a little bit of extra motivation for you to change your current situation into something different. So that's it. If you're not sure, if let's say you think, well, I'm not sure, I need a job application workshop, I need career support, but I don't know what, feel free to book me online. So if you go on Working with Isabel Discovery Call, just book me online and just say, I'm confused. I don't know what's best for me. I'm not sure the workshop is it for me. Workshop is really for people who want to build an application. So meaning that you already know that's what you need and you want to have a great application for Switzerland. If you're not sure that's what you need or you have other career issues, feel free to book the call with me. I will guide you. There's other things that I do. So maybe that's something that can help you. So again, the idea is to answer to a need. So if you have other questions or other things that you want to ask, this is where to book the call. Mrs. Nawalita, thanks for the feedback. Yeah, so for you, definitely, I don't know what your experience is being HR assistant, you say assisting. Yeah, you would have to see if there's a need for you in the market. But I think there's enough positions still in Switzerland. The great thing is that Switzerland is, there's still a lot of companies that are not fully digital yet. So they still need a lot of admins. They still need a lot of operations type of people because they haven't gone fully digital. If you look at how it's going, I mean, pretty much in China and all these places, it's a little bit more advanced, I would say, in terms of digitalization than it would be in Switzerland. So I wanted to share the link with you if you want to book the workshop. This is definitely something, just trying to exit here so that you can book it immediately tonight. You can also watch the replay on YouTube of what I just explained, but this is the link. So this is where you register for the workshop. Again, the bonuses is just until the end of the day. If you decide to go and register Thursday or Friday, the workshop is still open until the morning of. So the course starts at 10 on Saturday. So you have until 9 o'clock pretty much on Saturday to register. I will still take in your registration. The sessions is going to be 3 sessions on Saturday and 3 sessions on Sunday. And there's going to be some group work as well. I can do that online very easily. So it's quite complete. And I think the benefits would definitely be a new fresh career for you, fresh application to start back on your career. What about SAP positions for finance? Yeah, SAP, I mean, it's also a tool that's used. So you may find a lot of companies are using SAP. It's a little bit technical, so I think it's part of those jobs where there will always be some need. But then again, you just have to look if there's any recruitment going on. I'm not sure, within the next months, I think it's going to be a little bit tight with recruitment. So you can prepare yourself. Basically, you can just prepare yourself and try to give an orientation to your resume where that there's some positions. But I wouldn't necessarily limit it to SAP, because in the end, when you can use SAP, you can probably use other database as well. So I think, going back to what I was saying earlier, people are looking for more the soft skills and the flexibility, the mindset. Those are the skills that are wanted. The fact that SAP or PeopleSoft or God knows how many you have now, this can be transitioned into easily. So if you know one database, you become someone that can learn very quickly on databases. For example, I know that I've always learned a lot of database in my career. So tomorrow you can put me in front of one, I would probably figure it out, just because I have this mindset where I know intuitively how it works. So I wouldn't necessarily limit myself. And that's something you need to think about when you build your application, is not necessarily thinking about, I know SAP, or I know, which was very much the way it was in the past, where you needed to know one particular thing. But more than that, maybe orient more on, your soft skills and how you can adapt to a different company, etc. And then you can learn other things. It's you can even say you started learning something else, that may be a little bit more trending or something like that. So it's looking at the market, looking at Switzerland jobs, finance, and see what's trending and how you could fit into that. I would have to look at the moment. I haven't looked at the job boards to see recently exactly the type of positions. But again, for a resume, I would like to keep it a little bit more flexible, because if you put yourself too much in a niche, that's also limiting you in a way to just SAP, where in the end it's just a database. So, again, it depends what you do with it. If you're building something very technical for a company, it's another story. People who are in IT, for example, they are more on the producing end. They're IT people and they have to build the system, so they need to know it very well. But if you're more on the user end, which is the case mostly in HR and finance, you're just using the system, you're not creating it. I think it's more about your mindset with a system. Are you someone who enjoys, working with a system, and what's your apprehension of it? And I know I've worked with tons of different systems, and really in the end, I could adapt to most of them. I just needed a little bit of training on them, but in the end, it works. It works. So don't limit yourself to one thing, especially if you're on the user end. If you were able to use SAP, you can probably use another one, and just keep your mind open to other options as well. Except for the IT people, I would say, where you really need to know it backward and forward and be able to build it, and that's a little bit more technical. But great questions. It's always interesting. I think finance, there will be some positions in Switzerland. Banking, finance are big fields. So I would say banking, finance, not-for-profit, and admins also, there's some needs. But then you have to really be different, because those jobs, there's also a lot of different candidates. So you really have to sell yourself very well and to show that you're different. So if I have 10 admins that I'm going to see in one day, or 10 finance people, what's different in you? Then what are you bringing that the other 9 before are not bringing? So that's how to think about positioning yourself, basically, and the branding I was talking about, becoming an employee of choice. Absolutely agree. Thank you again. Thanks, Pedro, for joining this online event. And you can watch it again. It's going to be on YouTube, so feel free to watch this again if you need more, to go back maybe on some slides and things like that. This is always helpful. So if I don't get more questions, I will get going. I see we've spent already an hour and a half together, so it was quite active chat. And I hope people in the community on YouTube also enjoy watching this and get value from it. And if they're able to join us for the workshop this weekend, that would be fantastic. The more, the merrier. And also the more value we get from each other. So I will get going. So thanks again. Have a good evening, good dinner, and let's keep in touch. I will do this live frequently. So if you find events on Meetup, or I post them also on different platforms, so we'll probably catch up again soon. So bye. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining.